Here is where you can communicate openly and learn from one another, while respecting our diverse society and figuring out the truth to where we're heading. Join Trinity in a 2-hour roller coaster ride of research, comedy, and interesting content. Made with you in mind, people that matter the most. On Mondays at 12 a.m. Eastern and 11 p.m. Central, only on Revolution Radio Studio B. Be a part of a different way to hear radio.
If you're sick of the lies and ready to know thyself, to love thyself, well then tune in to the Loveolution with your hosts, Amy and John Paul, where we speak all about truth, love, and freedom every Tuesday night, 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Studio A, right here on Revolution Radio. And remember, only you can free your mind control. Be a Loveolutionary.
Interrupt your normally scheduled programming to bring you this important broadcasting announcement.
Now is the time to explore your greatest potential, embracing truth, health, and wellness while discarding the system and exposing its corruption. Experience true freedom every Saturday night between 6 and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Live from Studio B, it's the Jonathan Wright Show.
Find it right here at revolution.radio.
A narco-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week.
Yes.
But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting.
Yes, I see.
By a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs.
Be quiet.
But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more...
Be quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live, Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us. Here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Good evening. Hopefully everybody had a great Christmas. I know I did. And yeah, it's been actually a not too bad holiday. I've been visiting with friends, hanging out with family. It's been a good Christmas holiday. And I don't know. I kind of had the Christmas blues, at the beginning of December, but I snapped out of it and enjoyed the festivities. Had quite a bit to eat. I'm definitely going to have to go back to the gym and start doing some long walks again. Anyway, I must say, I need to apologize for last week's show. I had no idea that, for whatever reason, I'm not sure, but it clicked off during my show last week. So I don't exactly know why, but I can assure you that will not happen again. I did sound checks earlier, made sure all my settings were working and everything, so that will not happen again. Anyway, I am of course your host, the Red-Pilled Philosopher, for the Eyes Wide Open show. pre-New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve is tomorrow. Dawn of a new year. And we've been hearing some different things about what is going to happen in 2025 as far as the financial end of events and things. So I'm not sure. I mean, I just don't know. I don't want to, but I thought I would bring a guest on tonight, a very good guest who does online trading and has grown to understand the markets a little bit better than myself. So I'm going to bring him in. His name is Dan, and I'm just going to call him up now, and we will ask him questions, and hopefully we can get some answers. He just said hello, so I'm just going to call him now. There we go. Okay. Okay, I got that part, and I'll just press. Okay. Hello. Oh, there we go. Hello? Dan? Hello? Hello? Oh, there he is. Hi! How are you?
I'm very good. How are you this evening?
I'm good. Oh, technology, it sometimes scares me. But I somehow make it work. I don't know. Anyway. Yeah. So, I thought that I would bring you on today because, as you know, of course, New Year's Eve is tomorrow. And I know you've been doing some trading for, like, I know not too, how long have you been doing trading for?
Oh, officially about 10 years or more. So I have a bit of a background. I've read a number of books, but I've been in marketing and advertising since I was very young. I even took some courses in it, psychology courses, and I have degrees in business psychology.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, you probably know way more about this than I do. So, what has been going on in the financial markets lately, as far as you can see?
Well, I mean, I think we're having like a sort of revolution in the markets where like the average Joe is becoming far more insightful to day to day and minute to minute action on the markets. I mean, with the power of the internet, we can get more and more information that makes us on par with everyone at every moment, regardless of how big you are. Now, granted, some of these larger institutions have a little more technical prowess, and they certainly have better teams than a single retail investor or trader. But all the same, we're all converging to that same spot where, we're becoming equal and as knowledgeable to the trade winds as possible. So that's what I think in the smallest fraction of what I can kind of say at the moment. But at the same time, the markets are hugely manipulated. Yeah, from one day to the next, depending on who's involved. And this is why you get a lot of people complaining about, Congress or the Senate or whoever being able to trade. And I'm speaking, of course, mainly like the American markets because, they are the largest market overall. And, nobody can compete with some of these winners in that field who tend to, 10x and 20x their accounts, considering they're just public servants. They're never, do they even have, background in trading or market? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And that's very interesting. I think that it goes along with a lot of stuff that I've been talking about on my show, historically speaking, and just present day as well. The markets are being manipulated, and they were manipulated in the late 20s to create, of course, a depression. And excuse me, do you think that there is a possibility that we might have that happen again, but not on a large scale, but a smaller scale?
Well, these things tend to happen periodically. And what's amazing is some people seem to have such an edge on what's happening. Now, some people have a formula. They wait for these black swan events to happen. So because they know they happen, right? Periodically, could be 2 years, could be 10 years, whatever. So you gotta rule them out on that basis alone. But I mean, certain things like the housing crisis. I mean, our prime minister was actually able to keep us out of that. So I mean, he had foresight to know that the direction they were going in was going to crash. He could have shorted the market and made millions, like Burry did. And but everyone there just kind of ignored it. And what I got from the film, it was called The Big Short, is that they all knew it was kind of going on, but it was like there was nothing they could do about it. They just sort of had to keep going with the train and the politics of the time. And I'm not going to blame any particular president, but I'm just going to say, like, you had the Obama presidency, and you have everyone just sort of like wanting to give loans, and there's no downside to a bank giving out a loan that the government's going to cover anyways. So, I mean, why not just give it out, and whatever happens, happens, and then they get covered up to X amount of millions of dollars per person. It's just, a no-lose situation, and the taxpayers pay for it, and the spin artists spin it, and it's like, oh well, if you complain about this president, you're this or you're that, whatever. It's just, and it gets lost because everybody's making money, right? One way or another, except for the people that are losing money. Wouldn't it be like you and I? You know what I mean? Because we're the ones, sort of like contributing to this, and yeah.
Yeah. Do you think if the market, like, how centralized is the market today?
All right. Well, I used to tell this to my banker, and she totally agreed with me, and she laughed. This is years and years ago when I was getting my own trading account, and it just kind of appeared to me how everything was intermingled, and it was like, it's like looking at a giant bowl of spaghetti where all the noodles are intertwined, into one, which, makes sense because it's a country or, in governments and everything, but everything's intertwined into each other. So when they say free market, it's almost a misnomer. But the point is you get a guy like from the Federal Reserve, which is, kind of interesting how they created that. Jerome Powell, he comes out and he says, everything's fine in the markets. This is just recently. Everything's fine in the markets. We're looking at good. We're going in a good trend. The positions are right, but we just want to be extra cautious. So we're going to cut back 2 rate cuts for next year, just in case. That's where we're at right now, possibly, maybe, right? And it sounds like an innocuous and benign sort of thing to say, but the thing is, this guy has so much power over how the market reacts and what's going to happen. It's like, it kind of like, it crashed the market probably, in some cases 30%, depending on what you're looking at. So everything reacts to this one guy, because of what he's saying about the rate hikes and how much you're going to be paying for, interest rates on stuff you're going to buy and whatnot. And sometimes he misstates things, and sometimes the journalists take, either deliberately or by accident, take what he says out of context and run with it, where it's like every journalist has said this certain thing and is quoting him, and it affects the markets. I've seen it pump the market like, 10 to 15%, and it wasn't even what he was saying. If you look at the entire paragraph of the quote that he said, he's actually saying the opposite, and the market should be dumping, like in contrast, or it shouldn't be moving at all. So that's not, they've taken it out of context. So it's just, and people buy into this, and of course what happens is a lot of people lose money. They end up losing money on these, news blasts, and it should almost be a crime, really. I mean, I'm freedom of speech and everything, but they're just, it's almost like, but how can you have so many journalists saying the same thing and no counter journalists out there correcting them until days later? So anyone who's smart enough could, long the market up and then short it all the way down, and just, and there are people out there that are capable of doing such a thing, and they do it, and they make a fortune. Well, a lot of people, don't. They end up losing money just because of these, how centralized this Federal Reserve statements are that happen, month to month. And that's, just to give you an example of how much power, and since the United States market is the largest market, this is worldwide, these statements affect the entire world.
That makes sense. And I mean, one thing that's kind of that kind of relates to this is, all the wars that we have had, World War I, World War II, and the wars that never cease to end.
Yes.
Are kind of a correlation or a symptom of what is going on with the markets. Yeah. So that does kind of make sense what you're saying. Do you think that it's a good idea to get into trading right now, or is it not?
I think it's always a good idea to get into investing. Trading may not be everybody's thing. Investing is like another way of saying trading long term. But learning how to invest your money properly and your assets, and controlling your assets and managing your assets, I actually would put that at a top tier priority for everyone in life, because I've come to the conclusion that nobody has a job problem. What they have is a money problem. because nobody cares where you get your money, just so long as you have it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
Learning, like a person who makes, let's just say, $25,000 a year, can learn to manage their money a hell of a lot better than, say, someone who's making $50,000 a year, but they're spending it frivolously and in a way that's, damaging to their health, for their future, and,
Yeah.
So, and some people are like, they're just kind of like, oh, if I just had a higher paying job. Well, that's very true, but you also need to know how to manage your pennies and know how to stretch your pennies and balance that budget and learn how to invest your assets wisely and so on. So, I mean, someone like you, you could put into some like hedge funds or an indice or, some stock that you trust, right? Where you're compounding your money throughout the years. I mean, most of our retirement money comes from the markets like that, and they have experts learning how to trade it. And the truth of the matter is you're only getting 5% of what they earned, which is kind of probably why they created it, so that they could pool money together, in a larger fashion, and then, pay out pennies to the people who pooled it for them.
For sure.
But if you, I'm not suggesting that you not pay into those backups, but what I am suggesting is that you learn your own, accounting system and your money methods and your investment. High risk asset like Bitcoin, Bitcoin can kind of lose its, ability to generate money tomorrow, because it's a speculative thing, and it, I forget, it could be like, what was it, Nokia or something, or a Kodak, where the company just no longer has a future, because it just dropped off and it goes to zero, right? But at the same time, it can continue upwards. But you get something like, Warren Buffett is always suggesting this is the S&P 500. So, and it's an indice where experts have, collated, top performers and weighted them, according to what they believe. And he's saying invest in those because they're always going up. And I mean, if you look at the chart, it always is going up. And if you want to get even fancier, you could take some of the strategies that I believe that Jim Simons, I think is his name. I mean, I'll double check that here in a second. And he was the guy they said broke the markets, and he was a mathematician. He was not a trader. He was a mathematician. So this isn't, specifically to traders. It was just, he was a mathematician. He was a professor. He tried to teach people at school, and then when he broke out of the school, Jim Simons is his name. And when he broke out of the school, he created his own hedge fund, and he was one of the most successful hedge fund managers in the world. And he had a basic strategy, and that is, you wait for those, black swan events. I'll give COVID as an example. I give, you talked about the crash there in the 20s, and I brought up the housing crash. You wait for these things to happen, and when they happen, you put all your marbles in, and you can buy it, because they usually go in a V shape. Especially the COVID, where it dumped, and then it went right back to on par, went up another 10 or 15%. So you just gotta wait for that opportunity. So you don't have to be in the market all the time. You have to have a strategy that works. And if you're a person that can do that, it doesn't matter if you work at Starbucks or if you're fundraising for an organization or anything like that. You just, you're sitting there and the news tells you, we got the next pandemic and the markets dump and, everybody's terrified. So that's your opportunity to get in and make 10 or 20% on your money and then cash out when it's time to cash out, and then wait for the next opportunity. You know, it's a lot of it's about these golden opportunities, and you don't have to really look for them. I think they kind of find you. So, I mean, say you go back 20 years and you're a regular user of Google and you think, wow, Google's really taken off. It's, and it works, and I like the way it works, and it's got great user operability, then you've successfully figured out something that you can invest in with confidence, and, you don't go searching and forcing a trade or an investment. You found something that fell into your lap, and you spent enough time on it that this is good. This is good. And same for Apple and a bunch of these other things that people come across that they use day to day. And for someone else, it could be like the Tim Hortons. I remember my uncle wanting to get into Tim Hortons back in the early 80s, and I didn't even understand what he was talking about in regards to investment, but it was going public. It was in a position to go public, and he was a regular at Tim Hortons already. He'd go there, drink his coffee, and read the paper. And, so he's almost always investigating it before he even, got into learning trading and that. And the work does it for you. You invest in what you know. It's kind of this makes it easy for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, say, what about investing in small businesses, small locally owned shops? Is that a good idea?
This is where it gets riskier, because a lot of people, a lot of these businesses, they go bankrupt. Now, on the upside, if you're involved in that, it's a good way to get experience into these things. The downside is if you don't know how to, get there, then in the first 6 months, so to speak, but that's the reason why 90% of them fail, is because most people don't know what they're doing their first time out, and they have an idea of what business is, but they don't have an idea of, stage 2, 3, and 4. You know what I mean? So they're selling stuff that they like, but they're not actually, satisfying the market, right? So you may like a particular, you like crabapple poutine with no gravy, and you think it's so good that everyone should like it. Well, it turns out nobody likes crabapple poutine with no gravy, and your business goes bankrupt. You know what I mean? So you have to make sure, and you kind of have to hit the ground running. So I take, like the food truck across the street. I mean, they just have to, you need that proper marketing to get out there. So even if you do have a good product, you have to penetrate the market by, satisfying people's fears, and their objections. And a lot of their fears are, am I going to go to this place and the food's going to be garbage and overpriced and I lose out? No, you need a lot of referrals. You got to build up that referral and get it rolling really quickly, because you need that income to keep it going, to keep it generating. I have a lot of background in food service, so that's where my a lot of my understanding is. But there's other areas that you may be thinking of, like I don't know if you want to talk about any of your personal issues, but you may want to ask me more about a specific industry, and I might give you a different slant on that, but it'll generally be the same.
Yeah. So basically, a lot of the reasons why businesses fail, and maybe even people lose their money, is because they don't understand marketing. Is that correct?
Yeah, without a proper understanding of marketing and your location and stuff like that, that's, and balancing your budget, like there's probably about 50 things you really need to understand when you go into it. And if you don't have all of these things kind of like ticked off, then you're gonna have problems, and failure. So this is why so many, companies or so many people that are like that, it's like their third or fourth business down the road before they, they get, if they continue, they get successful.
Yeah, that makes sense. You were also talking about the housing crisis, and you were saying that we avoided the housing crisis, but it seems like the cost of houses is so high and has skyrocketed to an exorbitant amount that most people can't afford it. So how is that not a housing crisis?
Well, that's a housing crisis of a different sort, but a housing crisis is all the same. So what we have now is what I would call a market squeeze, and what anyone would call a market squeeze. I mean, I didn't invent the term or anything, but the idea is that they've created, you have your basic supply and demand, and the supply has shrunk and the demand has grown, and with that you have this you have a market squeeze where people have to pay exorbitant amounts of money just to get in to a house. So I think that was artificially created by our politicians and our corporations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to blame the immigrants because the immigrants were invited here.
Yeah.
Okay, so
the
corporations bought up all these houses, right? And they bought them on the cheap because the market was really low. And then they put in politicians that went out there and invited all kinds of immigrants to move in.
Yes.
To Canada. So you created a demand, but they created such a demand that now we have like mass homelessness and and nobody can afford a place to live, and as far as I'm concerned, the immigrants are also victims in this because they were promised things that they're not, they weren't going to get, and they are here facing this problem at the same time.
It's true. It's so true.
On top of that, we had this BS COVID thing that stalled development of housing. So on one end, they're slowing down development of housing, but they're still pushing up, the demand for housing.
Yeah.
So you've got a perfect storm.
Oh yeah. Not just that, but I mean the Immigration Act of 1965 was a lot of the implementation of that act was done by communists and the B'nai B'rith and many other organizations of that ilk who wanted to encourage third world people to immigrate to European countries. And so and yeah, I mean, it isn't a lot of the people who come here, who immigrate here, are doing so, and they have to pay brokers, and it is almost as bad as human trafficking, really.
Well, it technically kind of is human trafficking.
It is, yes, of course, yeah. It really is. And then when they get here, they, they encounter almost the same things that we are as white European people are encountering as well. So, yeah, I agree with you. How do you think the market will go in the near future, especially if tariffs are introduced. And I don't know if that's, just a media, 'cause I don't trust the the mainstream media at all. But a lot of people are talking about the possibility of tariffs, and how will that affect the market? Do you know?
I'm not particularly concerned about it at this point. I think that that's just all they got to talk about in this news cycle. So they need to pump something up. They need to create fear, and they need to create animosity in the public, so that they got something to talk about politically. That's kind of how I see it at the moment. Because we've kind of already had this dance with Trump, and we sorted it out. So, granted, it's not going to be perfect, and but Canada should seriously consider a lot of these ideas ourselves, because, I mean, we have unbelievable amounts of resources and unbelievable amounts of opportunities, and I can't understand why we're paying double and triple when we should be paying at least, 75% less. So, but for some reason, Canadians in general don't seem to understand this. I mean, some of them do. I've had conversations with people and they get it. It's like, wow, we got hydro everywhere. So why are we paying such, blow off the top prices? I mean, look at Manitoba. They have, massive amount of hydro there. And they're not even at 60% capacity of what they could produce, and they could certainly service Northern Ontario, and Northern Ontario is actually, their hookup is just frail. Northern Ontario could develop it and start buying from Manitoba, and cheap too, on the cheap, and develop up all Northern Ontario, because there's just so much resources up there. And immigration is not, Canada has a lot of space, but if we're not building houses, you're just going to have a lot of homeless. You know what I mean? So we could develop, but it needs to be in pace. So if, like I'm saying, and where I'm kind of trying to circle to is, like, regardless of the tariffs, we have our own assets and our own advantage. We're just not using them, and we just don't want to build secondary, markets or anything. We want to, ship them, get everything done overseas and stuff like that for whatever reason, but which kind of makes us a third world country all our own. So I'm not afraid of tariffs. Let's do it.
Well, one thing I'm wondering about, if we were to nationalize our economy, would that not help our market? And like I said, I'm not an expert. You know way more about this than I do.
I like the freer the market, the better, with more opportunities. But I did like how we ran the Bank of Canada, because the public's, the public sector could borrow from the public sector, and we had a lot of strength and all that interest could be paid right back to Canada rather than going to foreign banks. So we had it for years. We had this beautiful bank that was set up for, 4 decades or more, and then Trudeau #1 came in and tore it down, and then our debt went through the roof.
Yes.
So that's an area where I would like to nationalize, because we have the authority to do it, for one, and it just does wonders for the economy, and it keeps everything in Canada. This should be in Canada. I don't understand paying interest to foreign banks that does nothing for our country.
Exactly.
So that's where I'd nationalize. Everything else, I'd tippy toe around that nationalization kind of process, because I want the free markets to thrive.
Yes, yeah. I think that's actually a good way to do it. And yes, Trudeau, Pierre Trudeau, did tear down the Bank of Canada, but Trudeau, Mr. Trudeau, number one, was a communist, and so of course, tear down anything that allows you to be national, that allows your country to be a nationalistic economy, right? So, yeah. So, you don't think that the tariffs are gonna, because a lot of, or some people anyway, are saying, oh, if the tariffs come, it's gonna be a depression for Canada, and it's just gonna send us into the third world. What do you think of that? Is it, yeah?
No, I don't think that at all. I don't think Trump wants to do any of those things. He wants to look good in front of his country, and he probably has some good points about how, the economy should be run, and if their country is paying more than their fair share, Canadians should not be worried about it at all, I don't think. And as we get closer to that day, we're like a number one trading partner with them. So I don't think, it's going to be as quite the problem as they think it is. I just think they're hyping it out of proportion because A, there's nothing really else in the news cycle for them to talk about. B, they just don't understand how Trump operates and how he sells himself, on the large scale.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't.
Yeah.
And if Trudeau doesn't know how to deal with it, then I think he's not the guy that should be there.
Well, there's a lot of people who would definitely agree with that. So, how can people get involved? Like, other than investing, how can they learn to do this?
Right. So there's a number of things that you could probably look at online, to give you a direction. I always recommend a lot of books, to give you the background of how investing works. I mean, you could take school courses and stuff, but there's generally a bunch of courses that you could take online, in lieu of it, that are online, kind of preset. But I would start with books. You could do audio books as well, and just to give you some background. You could do some trading, like practice, like demo accounts, or practice accounts for what they used to call paper trading, but you can do it online. It's all it's all there to work with. But so here's one book. See if The Four Pillars of Investing. A book like that is a great book to read 2 or 3 times, to see if that's going to be up your alley. And certainly a bunch of other. I could give you book after book after book, until you get, just to get the basics of investing down before you get into trading, obviously. But learning how to invest, learning how to manage your assets and your money, I think is any books along with those subjects, which should be the first step before getting into any day trading sort of thing. And you're going to find out, some of the best quote unquote traders in the world are not day traders to begin with. They're long-term investors, like Warren Buffett, who's amassed billions just by building up safe assets, which is slow and boring, but
But
wouldn't it be great if you had a secondary? Yeah, wouldn't it be great if you had a secondary pension I mean, if I was, if I was like 20 again or 15 again, I would be building up a dividend fund that for when I got to a certain age, it'd be like, wow, I could just totally take over as my paycheck. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Because it would be worth it to invest. It's like, oh, you want to spend your money on a brand new, sports car, or do you want to spend your money on, a dividend fund that you build up after time that starts building itself up to the point where you could be making $50,000 a year just in dividends. You know what I mean? That's that's some solid relaxation money for a lot of us peasants. You know what I mean? So we can just go out there and live our lives, and if we want to go on an extended vacation, we can.
We can, yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly. You can take. So
I think that.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's the first place to start, and then you can get into series like The Market Wizards by Jack Schwager, and reading Jim Simon's book on, learning how to, quote unquote, solve the market, and stuff like that, to get next level. But you don't need to be next level. I'm telling you, you don't need to be next level. Just learning how to manage your money as best you can, and learning how to invest it properly, and the sooner the better. There were some other great books too. But basically it's, you learn how to spend your money properly. And so, instead of buying that shirt or that coat that, ruins itself within a year, you're buying like a proper leather coat that, that's fully warm and, will last you like 10, 20, 30 years. So you're not constantly buying a new coat, and you have that excess money to now put into other things. These kind of things, and maybe you're not spending $20 a day at Starbucks. You're buying Starbucks by the can and making it at home and saving yourself, $18 or whatever.
Yeah, just spending your money wisely, right? So that's a start. And this has been an excellent topic and a good discussion. I think there's been a lot of good information brought out. Like I said, I'm not an expert at this at all, so I've learned things tonight, and that's actually why I have people on, so so I can learn too, right? Along with my audience, and hopefully my audience will grow even more. And I'm gonna try.
It's a great motivator.
Yeah, definitely, right? So I think the more interviews and discussions that we have based on these kind of topics like history, marketing, like the markets, and world events of today, and who runs things. It kind of educates people, but it also does help them to make decisions that will better their lives, right? And that's the point. That's the point of radio networks like this, right? So, So thank you so much, Dan, for being on my show.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. I was glad to be a part of what you're doing. I hope to see you continue to grow.
You know what? I hope I will. I'm sure I will. I just have to promote it and keep uploading content as consistently as I can. It is difficult just because some of the stuff is not the most accessible for me to upload, but I try, and I mean, if I can get even other people to help me upload things and put videos together, that'd be great. Yeah.
I'd be glad to give you some pointers if you like, anytime.
Okay, perfect, Dan. Thank you very much. And this was Dan, who has given us a lesson in the financial markets of today and a bit of yesterday, too. So thank you very much, Dan.
Welcome.
Take care.
Bye now.
Bye. So, guys, I think I ended the interview 10 minutes early just so I wasn't talking over the music, and but I must say that interview gave me a lot of pointers in how to manage my money as well. So I really hope that did give others out there pointers on how to learn how to grow your finances and how to sustain yourself financially in challenging times ahead, possibly. Not saying definitely, but possibly challenging times ahead. So, like I say, I have I have no idea what 2025 is gonna bring us for the markets, and I mean, I have ideas and speculations, but I think the more prepared you are for challenging times, the better you will come out of them. And that means possibly learning how to invest wisely, getting some books on investing. He did recommend some books, and I'm going to find those titles and post them on my BitChute channel. I might even see about trying to find some audiobooks for investing as well. And I think that the takeaway from that interview is invest. But don't just invest in anything. Invest wisely. And I think that's difficult for some people because there's so many different things to invest in these days. There's Bitcoin, there's just a lot of stuff to possibly, invest and throw your money into. And it might not always give you what you're looking for. So I think that's a reason to possibly look at some of these books that he suggested, so that you can learn in detail how to invest your money, what things to look out for, good and bad. What are the pros and cons of stocks, and just how to get ahead of it and how to stay on top of it, basically. So I don't know. I'm not afraid of 2025. I mean, it's coming, whether we like it or not, it's coming. So, I think that the wisest thing for people to do is to just educate themselves on how to stay alert and alive. Whether the market plummets or whether it stagnates and just kind of bumbles along. I personally think that's what is going to happen, if you ask me. I think it'll just bumble along. Inflation will go up, and then it will go down, and then, because, as he said, yeah, there are people who are manipulating the market, for sure. Definitely. There's no doubt about that, for sure. I mean, depressions and recessions don't happen naturally. It's not a phenomena of nature. It's people manipulating the market to their advantage. Because either A, they have so much generational wealth that they just don't care. And B, because they think that we're cattle, and they just, why would you care about cattle? Why would you, if that's what you think, of the average person, why would you care? Honestly, why? So, it's both of those reasons, really, why the market is being manipulated and why it has been for such a long time. It's not just one reason. It's a variety of reasons. Those are the two top reasons. Anyway, please spare some shekels for Revolution Radio. You can donate at freedomslips.com to make 2025 a fantastic year for this wonderful, fantastic station. This is the Eyes Wide Open Show. I'm the Red Pill Philosopher. Happy New Year, everyone.